one image that came to my mind was when I would get the former President Robert Mugabe voting, especially when they were putting that ink on him.
Yeah.
I was so close, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, who am I to be so close to this?
Previously, they would have lifted you.
Exactly. So everybody was like, the people were used to fear the security guards, police, and him as well around, so close. I mean, as a media person, to be close at that distance.
Interesting that's the image that stands out for you, and it's for a good reason, because Robert Mugabe came to define Zimbabwean politics over a period of some 38 years or so. But what about that day on August 1? While, you know, the counting and intermittent announcement of the results was happening, then suddenly there was a protest and the situation went from 0 to 100. 1 minute we were in a conference room waiting for results. Next minute we are on the streets and there's army tanks and there's soldiers and live fire.
Talking about that, now you look at the visuals when the people were embracing the army.
Yes.
And fast forward it's people running away from them.
How difficult was that for you? Because I suspect that you and I were almost in relaxed mode because, well, we were all saying this election has been so peaceful thus far.
Exactly.
And then the next thing, the violence actually escalates. Like I said, it goes from 0 to 100. How difficult was it for you?
It was so difficult because now, remember now, the violence is happening now. You don't know whether it's going to be like live ammunition or whatever, because we could hear the sound at the distance, but when we get there, it was like real ammunition.
Yes.
And it was so scary.
And you remember the soldiers instructing you guys to switch off your cameras.
Exactly.
And that time, these guys are clad in full combat gear.
Yeah, like commando guys.
Their faces are covered.
Yeah,
and they're not joking.
It was so bad. As a camera person, I mean, like there's always that fear, but now you don't concentrate on the fear. Yeah. All you concentrate is, I have to get this. It's not for me. It's for many viewers out there.
Interesting. You know, you caught a lot of actual sequences and actual stories that could be pieced together without even realizing it. Because once we came back, I had the opportunity to look at our footage. There's a guy that we interviewed who was telling us that I was not part of this protest.
Oh, yes.
Later on, I looked at the visuals to sort of try and verify his story, and actually you see him.
It's true, because, yeah, exactly. I mean, and you know, like, coincidentally, he was there while we were filming, because he was coming
He was going in the opposite direction.
But later on, without realizing this is the very same guy, we interviewed him. That,
yes.
As you're saying, like, when you look back to the visuals, it is the guy who was beaten, but he was not even part of it.
He was going in the opposite direction of the protest, and he looked to me before he was beaten up by soldiers, and actually we've got that on video. Before that, he looks like he's trying to get away from the situation as fast as possible, but unfortunately for him, it's too late at that point.
Yeah, no. And then, I mean, the job that we do, we have to get that as well. But at the same time, you look at these soldiers, the way they were doing it, they could turn on us as well. So
yeah, no, they were not joking. Remember
they have that distance as well.
Remember the photographer who was crouching in the middle of the street?
He even raised his hands like, you can do whatever.
That looks scary.
Yeah, because he was almost beaten.
Yeah. Were you worried about getting beaten up or perhaps being hit by a stray bullet? I remember while we were live, you know, talking to you guys and almost not caring whether this was on air or not, that guys, they're using live ammunition. Let's look after ourselves. Were you worried about that?
I wasn't worried as such in terms of stray bullets, because the position that we had was much better. But I was worried in terms of getting beaten, because I mean it could happen anyway. The funny part was at the Bronte Hotel.
Yes, I knew you'd want to tell that story.
Exactly.
What did I do? What happened?
So these police guys come into the hotel. We thought they were going to arrest Chamisa, because Chamisa called the press conference. And now they didn't want us to be there as well.
Yeah.
So they started, the guy was saying, guys, move out. He was beating his shirt.
Actually, you're putting it very mildly. They were violently ejecting us from that press conference.
The next thing I look around is like, how? Here I am, I don't have any assistant. Thulas is not where to be seen. He disappeared. And I look, wait, Thulas, where are you? Thulas went all the way to the back of the hotel.
I was getting ready. I was looking for an exit.
Now I get a story after that. It's like, why Thulas? I know these guys. Oh, knowing them from your previous
from that
days
background.
Yes,
that it was only a matter of moments before the blows started raining.
But you know, like after that, looking at it, that said actually could have happened.
No,
it could have been beaten anyway.
The story is the only reason we were not beaten up. One, the president and the Minister of Information got involved. You remember that desperate
and they
shot?
saw that live on TV. Because
they saw it on TV, then they sent the Minister of Information to say, whatever happens, make sure those journalists don't get beaten up. And this is after the events of August the 1st. So already the image is tainted. So the minister went with a clear brief, make sure those journalists don't get beaten up. But two, we didn't get beaten up because there were international journalists as well there. And a lot of Zimbabwean journalists believe that had it been just a local contingent, the story could have ended very differently. And I sort of lean towards that.
Yeah, no, I felt scared after that anyway, because I had to have that camera, the very same big camera, and the tripod, because now I was trying to save the equipment as well.
Yeah. Oh, you are trying to save equipment? I was not thinking about it.
Can you imagine now if they destroy everything, like we'll be in Zim and doing what?
One of the things I love about working with you is sort of how, because of the time we've spent working together, we sort of can read each other's minds. Do you remember the shot that I wanted you to get at the Bronte Hotel just before the police came and before Chamisa's briefing? Remember how they set it up in the garden, and one of the things they had there was the crocodile. That crocodile sort of sculpture.
Yeah.
You remember how I looked at you, you looked at me without talking.
Yeah.
You knew what I wanted.
Yes.
And you told me it's
because
not
it was in relation with
the
the crocodile, and there's Chamisa there. So the crocodile versus Chamisa there was like
the nickname of the Zimbabwean
But now, unfortunately,
president.
we couldn't do it because now we were one camera and it's a live camera. So
yeah,
that's unfortunately part of it.
Great work.
Yeah.
The lasting image I have of November 2017 was of a pregnant woman that we encountered on the streets close to the main government complex on Samora Machel in Harare. She was pregnant and draped in the Zimbabwean flag, and she had a placard at the time. This was before Robert Mugabe's fall, and she had a placard that said, "I want my son to be born in a new Zimbabwe." And that, for me, it sent goosebumps, and I'm getting the chills as I think about it even now, because these are people who have lost. I mean, there's a talk of a lost generation that have lost so much opportunity to build themselves up, and it just talked to the hopes and aspirations of an entire nation. The atmosphere was pregnant with hope, but also a sense of anxiety, of not knowing what comes from what we are doing now, pressuring for Mugabe to go. And then coming to the election and sort of wanting to find out for myself if a new Zimbabwe was born, if a new Zimbabwe was delivered, and sort of starting to have doubts when you see, sort of believing initially that there is potential when you find that it's peaceful, but starting to have questions. It was never going to be perfect as an election, but then starting to have serious questions when journalists are attacked unprovoked by police and almost thrashed. I mean, I was totally scared that we were going to be beaten up and some of us were going to perhaps lose our lives and potentially limb from that situation. And then you start thinking that, people are still dealing with some of the issues that they've been dealing with, despite all of that hope that they invested in November 2017. Only time will tell what comes of it. President Emmerson Mnangagwa says a lot of the right things, but the assessment really is in the doing. When you have police threatening journalists, when you have people being arrested for insulting the president and undermining the dignity of the office of the president. After the incidents of that Bronte Hotel where we almost got beaten up, it was then weird because this is a government that seems to me to be understanding communication and public relations. And after that, we were invited to State House to be with the president, and he was going to address the issues, and the mood was jovial, and it was so comfortable, and they were treating us well, and he comes in when prompted by us, by our camera people, something unusual. They don't do that. They would have started and went ahead. I mean, you catch it if you catch it, you miss it if you miss it. And that whole situation is weird. And then he pleads that when I ask him who instructed the soldiers, that you are commander-in-chief of, who used your soldiers, because they are your hands, who used your hands, and was it with your instruction? And then you can tell that he's not giving a full answer. He says, that's why I've started this commission of inquiry, when clearly he knows more than what he is saying. So a lot is still up in the air. I mean, that country, we will continue to watch, and people are dealing now with a situation where the economic situation is almost reverting back to what it was in 2008. And people are sort of asking themselves, when will all of this end? When will we have a normal society?